Hello everyone and welcome back to another Strategoi video. Today we're doing a first impression of the General's Handbook previews that have just been released on Warhammer Community. Usually we go for videos with a bit more substance to it, but now we really want to get ahead of it and get the information out there. So I invited my co-host Ryan yet again to help me lead you through what's been coming out online right now and what we think about it and what the impact might be on the game. Welcome,
Yeah, for
Ryan.
sure. And hey everyone. I'm going to actually be reading through some of these rules to save Jonas's voice a little bit, but then we'll both be talking and chatting through the rest of it.
Yeah, I'm still recovering a little bit, but I was just too too keen to talk about this stuff. So we'll obviously cover this General's Handbook more in depth when we have all the info. But right now there's enough to at least chat about because it's going to make massive waves in the game right now, I think. So what can we expect from this video? We'll first go through all the separate rules that have been shown on Warhammer Community. Both Ryan and I will talk about what our thoughts are for each rule. Then we'll talk possible impact, not only in the meta, but for specific armies as well. And then what we can look forward to with the actual General's Handbook, what spells we could expect, and so on. Okay, Ryan, so I leave this part up to you, and I'll just add my opinion after you're done reading.
Sure thing. So we're going to start with the ones that were revealed. We don't expect these to be all of the rules that change with the battle pack, but obviously this is what we have to work with thus far. So let's start with the Masters of the Splintered Land, keeping in mind that we're still in Gur, but now we're in a new part of Gur. Galicia or something like Galat or something like that, right? Galat, I really feel they should have called it Galicia, but whatever, Galat. So this rule, friendly battle line units that have a wounds characteristic of 4 or less and, importantly, do not have mounts, gain the Galician Veterans keyword. So this is going to be the vast majority of your troops in this new meta, most likely, with your heroes and monsters and such being used for buff purposes, I assume. Yeah, or just kind of niche cases. All right, next one.
Or let's just talk about every single one of them before we move on.
Yeah, you want me to just read through them? Yeah, it's all good.
Yeah. So what caught my attention from the get-go here is, well, obviously everything with 5 wounds and up is just not benefiting from this rule at all. It's a little bit sad that mounted armies are also getting put on the side by this rule, but also keep in mind it's only battle line units. So if you're thinking about, let's say, a Nurgle army where certain of your units would fall under the category of this rule but don't cover the battle line role, then they're not getting this bonus.
Yeah. So as a cavalry player, I am sad about this, especially considering 2 wound cavalry units really could have used a boost. Maybe if they had worded it something like 2 wounds or less and do have mounts, or these are 2 options, that could have been nice because there's a lot of those units that don't get a whole lot of play. But regardless, the 4 wounds or less is still going to impact a lot of your bigger hitters, some of the guys that are on bigger bases, but then only have 4 wounds. I don't have a whole lot of armies that are like this myself, but obviously this would include, for Stormcast, I feel like an Annihilator's build is going to become even stronger. But in seeing what we're going to get out of this. But 4 wounds or less. The battle line thing, I don't think the battle line thing is ultimately going to be that big of a problem because they're increasing with each new army book that comes out. They're increasing the number of at least conditional battle line units, if not unconditional battle line units that are available. So I think it's going to give you a lot of flexibility here, especially if those units, of course, aren't mounts or have this relatively reasonable amount of wounds.
But it is, as you say, like, for example, the Paladin build, I was thinking about that one as well. You would only get this rule in your specific Paladin build where they are battle line because they aren't from the get-go. They need to be in a specific storm host, I think, before they become battle line. So normally they would not benefit from this rule.
That's true. Again, it's just certain builds. That's true with any conditional battle line. Like a lot of times you choose one thing that enables a type of conditional battle line, but that's going to exclude being able to take another. So if they both need a specific general, for example.
Yeah.
So
when I was reading this rule, I actually thought the exact same thing, by the way, about the 2 wounds. That would make it much more interesting, in my eyes at least. But I guess that would exclude ogres then, for example.
Yeah. I mean, well, the other thing, we'll see this with the fighting in 2 ranks rule in a second, but one of the things that would have also solved is that cavalry units in bigger than MSU size, their smallest possible size, tend to have a hard time getting everyone in because of how big their bases are and how the coherency rules play out. So if they had done that with 2 wound cavalry, you could have actually seen a unit of 10 on the battlefield, and could have been interesting, but alas.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on.
Okay, so we have the proving grounds rule here. I like that they've used these objective markers that no one uses because they take up physical space on the board, and they're just trying to sell that kit a little bit more. But anyway, at the start of each battle round, after the players have determined who will take the first turn, the player who will take the second turn can pick one objective on the battlefield to be the proving ground until the end of that battle round. The same objective cannot be picked as the proving ground more than once per battle, and only one objective can be marked as the proving ground at any one time. Only models and units with the Galician Veterans keyword can contest an objective marked as the proving ground. So, of interest here is it's kind of like how Finest Hour with your heroes can only be used once per game per hero. This is kind of what's happening in the objectives. I definitely like that they did that so that you can't just sit on an objective and make it yours and keep choosing it. The fact that it's the person who takes the second part of the battle round for every single battle round instead of just the one that we have now, which is going into battle round 3 where the second person gets to burn an objective, which I don't know that sticks around. I don't think it does. I think that was a GHB thing. So maybe that's no longer a thing, but I think having it in all 5 battle rounds will help disincentivize doing double turns a little bit, because before it only impacted the game if you had objectives that were burnable and if it was the 3rd battle round.
Yeah.
And then this contesting objectives thing. We've seen something like it in battle plans before, right? There's one right now that has to be held by battle line units. So this is basically the same thing, except it's more specific that it has to be Galician Veterans type of battle line, which of course, as we said, is 4 wounds or less and not mounted. Yeah. So I think this is interesting. I like it.
Yeah, I like it as well. This is actually the replacement for the seismic shifts special rule that we have in the current GHB. That was also trying to disincentivize going first every time. I think this is way more impactful.
Yes.
And it's especially good for armies that have very mobile Galician veteran units. I'm thinking if the new Sylvaneth units get the Gosmith archers as a battle line, that would be really good for them because they're super, super fast. But that's just obviously one of the many examples. We were already talking about this rule in the Discord, and a lot of people only thought about the apparent bonus where you can choose to your own benefits. But you could actually block your opponent with this as well. At least, well, block is maybe a strong word. But like, for example, we were discussing whether going 1-drop was still important. And I'm of the opinion that getting the decision to go first or second is even more important now. And someone mentioned, yeah, but why? Because it doesn't really give you any advantages in the first round. And I strongly disagree, because let's say we're playing a match Ryan and I'm going second. I'm choosing an objective as a proving grounds in your territory in the first round that you're getting anyway, and that I am not getting anyway. And you'll never be able to take that objective anymore as the proving grounds.
Assuming I don't have Galician veterans, you mean?
No, like you can only select one objective once a game, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's say there's an objective in your zone that I don't expect to capture anyway, ever, or not easily at least.
Yeah.
I go second. I could easily choose that objective as the proving grounds because that would remove that from your choice of making an objective the proving grounds, and B, force you to choose other objectives that are more difficult for you to claim as the proving grounds if you were to go second.
I got you. Yeah, I mean, it's just it's kind of like a softer version of burning that objective. It just takes it away from you. Yep. It would be like getting to choose when your opponent has to use their finest hour. You know, it's kind of a bummer, but it doesn't actually mean you lose the objective per se. And keeping in mind here that let's say you get to choose, and your opponent has an objective clearly held, but not by any Galician veterans. And you choose this, that doesn't mean that they lose control of that objective. You still have to put a model on it.
Yep.
And you would have to put a Galician veteran. You just have to put just one on there, right? And then all of a sudden it would be yours. It's a whole lot easier to take in that case. That said, this is kind of a moot point because I think we're really heading into a meta where almost everyone on the board is going to be a Galician veteran. Mm-hmm. So I don't know how often that's really going to take place, but it doesn't. The way it's worded now, at least, it won't let you just make them lose control of it just by choosing it. Not that you suggested that, but that is something that maybe someone might be thinking just on a first read here.
Yeah, I mean, this rule basically fucks over any giant army, right?
Yeah, I guess giants, are going to have a real hard time.
They can literally never keep an objective if you don't let them.
I actually think Gargants are going to not be able to compete at all. I mean, think about a block of 60 zombies. Yep. They're all battle line, and they're going to count as, if you see foreshadowing to the other thing we're about to see, where they count as 3 models a model, 3 bodies a model. That's 180. There's no way a giant's taking that.
Nope.
You know, at all, ever.
Yeah, it's basically we are going to be able to do to the Sons of Behemoth players what they've been doing to us for an entire season. Right. So yeah, it's going to hurt for them especially, and also all the monster builds, right? The Stormdrake build is going to suffer immensely from this, I think.
Yeah, and supposedly we're going to lose that hero phase movement of theirs too. So and who knows what's going to happen.
Let's move on.
Yeah.
Okay, take it away.
All right. The Bonds of Battle. When a model in a Galician Veterans unit makes an attack with a melee weapon, you can target an enemy unit within 1/2 inch of another model from that Galician Veterans unit instead of using the weapon's range characteristic for that attack. If you do so, the attacking model must be within 1/2 inch of another model from its own unit that is within 1/2 inch of the target. So you've got a graphic here for us.
Yeah, just to visualize it a little bit. So in a normal circumcise.
Yeah, nice. That's why we need those great weapons for circumcise.
Yep. Yeah, it's been a while since I've done one of these videos. It's really tough for me to get back into it with the English. Anyway, in a normal situation, you would only be able to fight with the golden rank here, right? If your opponent's red and you're gold, and you have 1 inch range and you're on 32 mil base, for example, you're not hitting with your second rank in this formation. But now with the ability and with this special rule, all models that are within 1/2 inch of that first rank, that is within 1/2 inch of enemy models, can still fight. So it's basically you're getting an extra rank for free.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is going to impact different units. There's going to be basically a matrix that you can make here. Here's my math hammer stuff coming in, where you are going to have on rows or columns, one or the other, the base size, and the other element on the other type will be the range of the weapon. So some people have already suggested this does nothing for 25 millimeter bases with 1 inch reach. Which isn't entirely true, because we all know that the 1 inch range was just enough if you're hugging the other model and your other friendly unit is hugging the enemy unit, then 25 mil is technically just under 1 inch, and so it was always possible to fight in 2 ranks like that. This is going to give you a little more leeway though, because now with the 1/2 inch on either side plus the base, you don't have to scrunch up and get as many models as possible in there. In order to pull this off. Obviously, that back rank will never be able to fight at that range or whatever. And also if you have 2-inch range on 25 mils, I don't think that's going to have any impact whatsoever. The 2 inches is far better because then you could get a third rank in. If everyone's hugging each other, if you will. But it really depends on what base size we're talking about. And one of the things, of course, I think a lot of us are probably thinking about here is, oh, good, finally my unit of guys with big bases can finally get in, into combat, even though they used to not be able to. Well, keep in mind, a lot of those big base guys are ones with wounds characteristic of 5 or more. Yeah. So some of those aren't like Kurnoth hunters, for example. Are they 5 wounds? I think
sadly,
they might.
Yeah.
And so Kurnoths are not going to get to benefit from this the way we wanted to. But there are, of course, Stormcast units are going to benefit greatly. They're all on 40 mils.
Yeah. Ogres as
and
well.
Yeah. And by the way, that Annihilator build, we're looking at some protectors here in the picture. That they don't need it. I don't know why they put this in the picture because they've got a 3-inch range.
Yep.
But that Annihilator build that we were talking about gives access to, as new conditional battle line, all of the paladins, which includes protectors and the other guys, retributors, I think, and decimators, plus the 2 types of Annihilators. So actually, I think that build is relatively decent. But anyway, when it comes to it, at the end of the day, I think this rule is still good. I understand why the wording is so complicated, is because when I first heard the rumor about this rule, I was like, how are they going to determine what qualifies as being in the second rank?
Yep.
Second rank is kind of a nice way of saying it, but the way you lined them up in this picture, at least in my personal experience, is almost never how my units actually look in practice.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's more a soup of things that are just osmosising their way as close to the enemy as possible, and a second rank in that situation is very hard to define. But I like the way they worded it. Once we get used to it, I think it'll be quite intuitive.
Yeah, I like the idea of it. I'm not sure I'm a huge fan of the rule existing as a whole. I think they decided to go from fantasy battles to Age of Sigmar, and they dropped the rank fighting and they start with range on weapons. And I actually thought that was quite of a subtle and smooth system. You just measure from every model. Now you're not only measuring from every model for your basic range, but also this rule is applied to every model, and you're not obliged to use it. So you're actually always measuring both ranges usually, or seeing what works best, or you at least have to measure to one model first and then measure from that model to another model. I think it will take a little bit more time, though I do like what they are trying to solve here, for sure.
Well, we're going into Horde meta, so time evidently they don't care about at all, because it's about to get horrible. No one's going to finish their games in 3 hours, 3.5 hours. Yeah. Like if they had a problem now, they're definitely going to have a hard time now with the new rules.
Yeah.
Another thought, though, this is a GHB. It might only last for 6 months. Some of these rules, some of these might stick, some of them not. But the other thing to keep in mind is that we've been talking for quite a while about how so many units could really use their 1-inch range increased to 2 inches. The Namarti Thralls are one of the big success stories of that. But mostly we have not seen ranges changed in new battle tomes. And so maybe this is GW's way of testing it out before actually going through and changing every single unit's range to make some of these units actually be able to fight a little bit more. So if this is just a temporary thing and just like them kind of beta testing it in real time, I'm okay with that, Yeah. I feel like that's what these rules kind of have been too. Like OBR, we know, was kind of like a beta test for what the command point system is we have now. Mm-hmm. So I think we'll get used to it, and then maybe it sticks around if it's good, or maybe they incorporate into the core rules if it's that good, or maybe they rewrite a whole bunch of War Scrolls, which we know they're not very keen to do. So, I think it's good that we see them experimenting with how things work.
Yeah, that's definitely fair. All right, so the next one is the command ability. It's not a special rule anymore. Go ahead.
Okay, Overwhelming Assault. You can use this command ability at the end of your charge phase. So this would be at the same time we usually do Monstrous Rampages. The unit that receives the command must be a Galician Veterans that has 10 or more models, which is also very important here. Pick one enemy unit within 1 inch of that unit that has a wounds characteristic of 4 or less, and roll a dice. Just a single d6. If the roll is greater than the number of models in that enemy unit, the strike last effect applies to that enemy unit in the following combat phase. I don't actually think this ability is that strong, because think about what you're trying to do. You have to roll a d6 that has to be greater than the number of models in that enemy unit. Let's say they haven't lost anyone in that unit yet. They also have to be 4 wounds or less. So your best bet, clearly no hero is 4 wounds or less, except like a couple exceptions in the game. And which would be 1 model. That would be the easiest one to roll higher than their number of models in the unit at a 2+. Okay, that would be great. The next smallest unit, of course, is a unit of 2 models, which means you have to roll a 3+. But almost all units of 2 models have a wounds characteristic of more than 4. For example, like Varangard or Fulminators or Trolls, I think, are more than 4, right? So that's not going to happen very often, to get the chance that you only get it on a 3+. And then it keeps getting worse as the model count gets bigger. So your unit has to have 10 or more models. They have to be Galician Veterans. And you have to blow a CP in order to roll higher than the amount of models in their unit, which is almost never going to happen because everyone's going to be taking Galician Veterans units. So unless it's a unit that has gotten whittled down already, so this is basically just adding insult to injury here and making them fight last. I don't see this, of all the new rules, I see this as the weakest one for sure because of all the constraints put on it. But maybe you have a different opinion, Jonas. I don't know.
No, I 100% agree. The thing is, when I read this for the first time, I really had to read it like a couple of times because I just could not understand why they would ever want to write this rule. And I'm almost 100% sure as well that they started off with something much stronger than this one. Maybe even like if your unit counts more models than the other one, they strike last. And I think they figured out in beta testing that it was too strong and probably had to rewrite it so many times that it ended up being like a pale shadow of what it used to be or what they intended it to be. Because, it replaces the realm command of Feral Roar, which was also rarely used because it was competing with Allied Attack for a monster to let them fight at their top bracket. But this is even more niche. I mean, it's basically, as you say, like most of the times that this ability is going to trigger, or that you might be able to trigger this ability, is when your troops are fighting troops that have been severely weakened. If the fact that the amount of models has to be below a d6 and you still have to roll that d6, so you're not even sure how many models you're not even sure your command point is going to pay off, and then the only benefit you're getting is them fighting last. Who cares?
Yeah. And here's the other thing is how I think the rules said that if a unit is affected by both the strike first and strike last, they negate each other, and then you just fight in the regular part of the combat phase. I think that's what the core book says.
Yes.
It almost never comes up, but now I'm thinking about Namardi in turn 3 that you could do this against, and all that you did was just make it so they can fight in the normal sequence, which is even less impactful. Of course, not all that many units have fight first, but in the cases where they do, this is already your Lumineth stuff where you can have 2 units. That's not technically fighting first, is it?
No.
When you get to fight with 2 units at a time.
No.
So
in
that,
the
I guess
high elf days in fantasy it was strike first, but now it isn't anymore.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I actually liked Feral Roar a lot. I forgot to use it a lot, but especially when I was playing with the Leviathan, because his save is a 2-up on his top bracket, and that is way better than an all-out defense. If you're trying to get him to not die, then you're putting him on his top bracket so he hits harder and he's got a 2+ save. It would be the equivalent of giving him +2 to save or something like that, depending on how wounded he was at the time. But like with other monsters too, I always felt like that was a pretty good option, and I'm always happy to see that exists on certain War Scrolls. Like the Avalinor, I believe, has some version of this when he's standing around a Stone Mage. right, where he gets to fight on top bracket at all times. I think that's good. Like the whole last meta was all about taking these monster, especially the non-hero monster war scrolls, and trying to make them valid again or make them worth their points. And now that that's fallen off, I feel like it's just another blow to monsters in a obviously not monster meta that we've got coming up. I think it would have been fine to leave Feral Roar in there and then toss this relatively non-bow, non-combo command ability in just for the lols and see if it sticks.
Yeah, because if you're saying that you forgot to use Feral Roar, you're definitely going to forget this, because the times that this is going to be useful are so small.
Right, 100%.
So rare.
And fighting last isn't always that bad. I mean, like, if the opponent has, if the attacking unit that used this command ability has fewer units to fight with than you do, then half of your units are going to end up fighting at the end of his sequence anyway. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, that's always a thing we have to consider when we're talking about strike first, strike last. Yeah, sometimes it's super important, but again, the chances that this goes off are pretty slim. So if you have 5 models in your unit, which is a normal amount of models to have in a unit, this only goes off on a 6.
Yeah, if you look at the flavor... Yeah.
Go for it.
If you look at the flavor text here, at a roared command, a group of warriors charges forward as a single mass, utilizing their superior numbers to barrel over their foes, or otherwise put them on the defense. You can really tell that they had something else before this rule, right?
Yeah.
Barrel over their foes. I mean, no one's seeing barreling over their foes in this rule. So yeah. I would like this rule more if it said you get +1 to hit and +1 to wound to your attacks. You would basically only ever use this if you're like flush with the command points, because it's still on a dice roll, and it would guarantee that you at least finish off that battle line, for example, or that small unit, for example. And I could see that being used very rarely, because it's in the charge phase at least. But as it is now, I don't think it'll come up much.
At least it's good that it's at the end of the charge phase, so it doesn't eat one of your abilities in the combat phase.
Yeah, but, I like that, yeah. It would have also been interesting if it was just at any point in the game, because then it would maybe pop up at some certain moments where armies have special abilities where they can strike at opportune times where you don't want them to, and then this could be useful, forcing them to not strike, for example, or whatever. But yeah, okay, let's move on to the last bit of the preview.
All right, so this is the big one. Expert Conquerors. Galician veterans units only. Each model in this battalion counts as 3 models for the purposes of contesting objectives. So before we talk about that second one, first off, you can see that this one requires at least 2 troops. So if you only have 1 floating around, you can't use it. And it can take at max 3 units, which with like some double reinforced units is still going to be a crazy amount. Think pinks if they stay battle line, or zombies. I can't imagine them taking the battle line keyword off zombies, but I can imagine it with pinks, because we do know that some pitch battle profiles are going to be rewritten. And remember, that's part of the pitch battle is whether they're battle line or not. So, but also keep in mind that this is replacing Hunters of the Heartlands and Alpha Beast Pack, I guess these 2 battalions, which means if they're worded the same way above the text, a lot of people forgot this, but Hunters was a battalion you could only take once. You can't take multiples of Hunters. Same with Alpha Beast Pack. That's not true of the core battalions that are in the core rules, only those in the GHB. So hopefully that stays. Because imagine that big block, like let's say you've got 140 zombies, which you can do double reinforce 2, and then take 1 block of 20, giving you 140. 140 then counts as what? 420 models on objectives. And they come back. If you get Van Hells off on them, one of those units is getting to fight twice, 6-inch pile-in. That objective is never getting taken away. It's going to exacerbate the types of problems we saw with Pink Horrors, and for a lot of units. Now, with an elite force like Stormcast, this is not so bad, because we've already seen that in Stormkeep they have the ability to have Redeemer models count as 3 models. This is kind of what this is copying a little bit. So Stormcast isn't getting as much of a push on this, but that's not so bad when they already have a low model count. But those armies that have extreme numbers of models, this is going to be a problem. The second battalion that's listed here was doing extra damage against these people. So that's great and all, but I don't think it's going to be enough to remove them, enough to take the objective. It might be enough to remove some, like certainly, but it's not going to. Yeah, okay. Everyone you remove removes 3 models instead of 1, but
yeah.
If you've ever played against Tzeentch pink army, I think you're gonna have a lot more of those feel bads with this battalion.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is going to be so overwhelmingly strong on horde armies that can actually do proper hordes, like 25 mil hordes, like Skaven, or as you say, Soulblight, or even Mortec guards. They are so difficult to remove from an objective. And now imagine them counting as 3 models each. That's going to be insane. So the only way you're ever competing with those kind of armies is by bringing the same units and pushing them on the objectives, right? Or the battle plans are going to be something very specific. Just a small correction, by the way, Ryan, because you say the 2nd Battalion Bounty Hunters deals extra damage against these guys, but that's not exactly true. It deals damage against all Galician veterans, and Galician veterans are just battle line units with 4 or less wounds.
Right, I read that and then read the Galician veterans thing inside this, and you're right. Yeah. But that's still good. That extra one. The good news about this battalion, both these battalions, is that they are. The second one is giving some kind of buff to your non-Galician veteran units, so that's something. So if you are a cavalry player, you've got at least something to hang your hat on. But the other thing is these are both going to be distracting people from taking Battle Regiment all the time. Also, they confirmed in the article that Hunters of the Heartlands is falling off. So now, if an army has immunity to monstrous rampages, like the one Stormcast sub-faction that does, and I think there might be another unit or 2 in the game or sub-faction that's immune to them, but that's actually going to become much more valuable now. So Hunters is gone.
I'm so glad that that's gone. I enjoyed it the first month or 2, and then I was like, please get rid of it. I want to, if I bring a monster, because I could rarely do so as a Lumineth player, I at least wanted to be able to use my fucking roar, right? I mean, yeah, so I think both of these battalions are going to be so strong. The extra damage one is definitely going to be picked as well, I think, even if it's just like +1 damage for all versus Galician veterans or anything like that. That's still insanely good.
Yeah.
Personally, I think the expert Conquerors is looking a bit too strong for my tastes. I think it's going to swing the game a bit too far in the direction where everyone is going to want to field at least 3 of expert Conqueror units.
It's an auto take. There's no exactly. And plus every army can make, except maybe ogres, can make and Gargants, these Galician veterans, right? Does ogres have anything small enough that counts as battle line?
Yeah. All their basic infantry can.
Which one?
All of them.
Oh, they're 4 wounds.
4.
Not 5.
Yep.
That's okay, and they're not mounted. But
it's just a bit sad for the ogres because we keep bringing them up as an example, but I mean, ogres already had this rule, or at least a less effective version of this, right? They have 2 on an objective, I think. Yeah.
And
so
actually, they're going to have to FAQ that, because I think the FAQ said that ogres count as what's written in the book. The book overrides the other rules, so they might. I think they're going to have to come in and FAQ that back, so that. But maybe that only applied to the monsters.
Yeah,
I don't know.
They're getting a new tome in the fall anyway, and maybe the tome will just say they count as 1 model more, and then they would count as 4 with expert Conquerors, I guess.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Yeah, that would work. It's just, I think this would have been much more interesting if you're swapping the Proving Grounds rule with this one. Just imagine, basically the 3 units in your army are going to be what's called in 40k objective secured, where if they're Galician veterans and they're in this battalion, you're getting that objective unless the other guy also has Galician veterans that have more models. It's basically the same thing.
Yeah.
And then the Proving Grounds would enable the second player to choose one of his Galician veterans to have them count as more models for that specific time, maybe even over conquering a different thing. That would have been, I think, a bit more aggressive in play style.
Yeah, more tactical.
Yeah, because now this is going to be so annoying, as you say. I mean, I play Soulblight myself, just pushing, especially think of zombies with their 6-inch pile-in. How many times have I taken an objective with just that cheeky pile-in move, right? That is a real feel bad for my opponent. Now it's going to be that much more easy.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah. All right. That's the rules. Let's talk possible impact. So let's start off with the intended impact. So when you see these rules, I think it's very obvious that they really wanted to make a massive shift with this GHB, right? They promised us different a different feeling for each GHB, and I think they wanted to come out swinging. And they're like, you know how you loved bringing monsters and elite armies? Well, fuck that. Now it's all infantry, and now it's massive hordes. You could not be more different than the first GHB, right?
Yeah. So I mean, a couple thoughts. One is, what is GW trying to do? I think they have a twofold mission here. One is financial, and the other is kind of community building. The financial one is like, let's sell more infantry models, right? And less of this save stacking hero, because like implicitly a lot of these candidates for the Galician veterans are going to be less saved models, right? Like ones with worse saves.
Yeah.
So that's good. That means the save stacking is going, and you're going to be taking more of them. You only still probably have 4 reinforcement points to use, so you can't put all your eggs in one basket the way we used to, perhaps, as easily. And remember, the bigger units are, the harder they are to be wholly within a 12-inch bubble for Mystic Shield. Also, they're not heroes, so you can't do Finest Hour on them. So, I mean, exactly. So, so all of this considered, I think it's good to kind of push back against the save stacking meta. They're also trying to save or sell more models of this type. And thirdly, I kind of feel like, kind of like how Magic, if anyone plays Magic the Gathering out there, Magic has like basically a new season every year. And I think that's what this whole season thing has been trying to kind of make Warhammer feel more like, is where the meta changes drastically based off of this supplementary set of rules. I like that that's doing that. And I think that makes the game more kind of alive and a living, breathing mechanism, rather than like, oh, every 3 years we get a new core rules set and some new battle plans every year, but whatever. This really does feel like it's changing everything. It's not changing in a way that I'm particularly in love with, because I play cavalry and like kind of elite armies. But there might be some kind of workaround for this, or I don't know. I'm gonna have to think through it. But what do you think about this intended impact?
Well, it's a bit as I've already said. I think they really wanted to make a big change to show what they can do with making more GHBs, because I think at first there was a bit of a backlash because it seems like an obvious money grab, and it might be that partially at least. But you know, if you're playing a GHB for only half a year, it's not that bad when it's a very stark contrast to the previous GHB, because it's only going to be there for 6 months anyway. I do wonder how long they're going to be able to keep this up though, because in my head already you could move on. You've had monsters, now you have infantry. There's going to be a cavalry one probably at some point, but how many armies can actually compete in the cavalry segment? But hey, that's one thing. And then there's probably going to be something about magic or teleportation or movement, whatever. But this is not something you can keep up every half year, I don't think. At least not with this kind of impact.
Well, that's why I think when I say some of these might stick around for the second half, I don't think they're going to overhaul everything. I think it's going to stay some kind of infantry-based season, but like other things around it will change.
Yeah.
And it's a way for them to play test things. I really do think it's also a format for beta testing in real time.
Yeah.
Which is good, because that means 4th edition is going to be great. I mean, 3rd edition is already better than 2nd. So, you know, I think with however many of these seasons, I guess it would be 2 years worth of 2 seasons. So 4 plus the 1 monster season. So 5 seasons to test out all kinds of crazy rules interactions. And here, hopefully, we're going to get new points values for everything and some rewritten war scrolls, evidently from rumors. I really hope they make the particularly egregious cases of these veterans, these Galician veterans units. I really hope they raise the prices. If pinks get to stay battle line, they need to go way up. Same with zombies. Zombies are too cheap. And keeping in mind what they did last time, when 3rd edition started, every army saw somewhere in the vicinity of like a 15% points raise, if not higher for some things. Like Zinch got way more expensive. If they keep doing that, it might be less of a horde meta than we think it's going to be. With the current points values, we're going to have a crazy amount of models on the field. But if they keep raising them, maybe it'll keep becoming this more skirmishy, intimate game on the smaller battlefields and less of a pushing a million zombies around. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, so now, with those comments, we've already reached our second point of a little bit. So the expected impact, I agree with you. What I look forward to the most, seeing these rules and, expecting a horde meta, as we call it, or as we've been calling it, mortal wounds are going to be way less impactful than they've been in the previous editions.
Except to snipe those heroes that you're boosting everyone with.
That's definitely true, but I really disliked how prevalent mortal wound output has been in the last few books. I mean, that's talking as a as a Lumneth player who is enjoying their mortal wound time in the sun since the book has come out. But, Sentinels, if it is true that they're going to be nerfed, which I fully expect, they're not going to be as impactful, except, as you say, for sniping small heroes, obviously, which I still don't really like. But if you're inflicting 6 mortal wounds on an elite monster, that's a massive deal. But if you're killing 6 zombies or 6 clan rats with your mortal wounds, who even cares at that point, right?
Right. So I've been saying for a long time that people have been undervaluing units that can do a large amount of damage against weaker saved foes and with more bodies. So like all of a sudden in Stormcast, Vanquishers just got a lot better because you're often going to be going up against units that have 10 or more models. Same thing with instead of long strikes, we're probably going to see hurricanes get more popular again because they actually do outperform long strikes as long as you don't need the range. They don't have a lot of rend. They have better expected value. Hint, hint to the Math Hammer videos. But yeah, like I think this is good. Ultimately, that we're going to see some shifts and some big things. I just don't want to. I really hope it becomes less about pushing a million models around, and I don't want to have to use a chess clock in every single one of my games. I know it's becoming increasingly popular, but whatever.
The thing I'm most fearful of is the feeling that we've all had when we were playing against giants, where they move on an objective and you're not taking it back. Obviously everyone's going to be able to take that battalion, right? Or most everyone at least. But it kind of forces you to do so as well, because if your opponent is taking 3 of those units in that battalion in Expert Conquerors and you have none, it's game over already before you've even started playing.
Right, and keeping in mind that like you still have to get them off the objective, even if you have a similarly sized unit that also counts as 3 models, you still have to get an equivalent amount of your models onto it. And if they've got some giant block that's basically sitting on the whole objective itself, good luck. This is where that Stone Guard ability to push things back might help, but like I don't know if it's going to do enough. And also, how much time is that going to eat up? And having to move a unit of 60 zombies or whatever. I don't know. Everyone
in our Discord was really looking forward to a buff to Swordmasters and Stone Guard, and I think Swordmasters will see some more play. But simply because of that, I think Stone Guard are even more out now because they don't really benefit from anything. Okay, sure, they can fight in 2 ranks now, but they didn't really do any damage before anyway, and now you really just want even more bodies, right? Before you were choosing 5 models over 10 Wardens, for example. Now you're choosing 15 models over 30 in value. So that's huge.
Yeah, supposedly they are getting that damage buff coming up soon with either the new battle tome or the rewrites for War
Yeah.
Scrolls in these battles, but we'll see.
Could be interesting. Could be interesting. I think I look forward to trying out Sword Masters just in case of, in case of massive amounts of 25 mil bases, then using the 2-inch range to tag 7 models with each model, then putting them in a battalion where they inflict more damage against Galician veterans. Every attack is 2 damage. Woo, baby.
So this is an example. Yeah, it's strong, but this is an example of where if you are on 25 mils and had a 1-inch range, where you don't want to hug all the models.
Yeah.
Because now they can fight in 2 ranks without having to be as tight in as possible. So if they knew that going into your unit of Swordmasters, they would intentionally spread out to the edge of 1-inch, 1/2 inch plus 1/2 inch off of that first row, so that you have less attacks. So that is one of the benefits of that new rule.
Well, we've already segued a little bit into the last topic then, the immediate impact on armies. So obviously I'm looking at it from a Lumineth, Sylvaneth and Soulblight perspective. You're looking at it from a broader perspective, I think a lot of cities builds will benefit from this. I mean, Phoenix Guards, holy shit.
That's my new, I might as well toss it in now. Please go watch the Math Hammer video we just released, the first one of the actual series, not the intro video. It talks exclusively about Phoenix Guard, but just as an example. You could apply the same logic to any one War Scroll. But it does have Phoenix Guard on my mind right now, and though they don't benefit from the fighting in 2 ranks because they already have 25 mils and 2 inches, that save is going to be crazy, and they're all going to count as 3 models. So I actually have 60 Phoenix Guard, so I think I might be that might be my elite version of a Horde army that I end up playing around with.
Yeah, I can definitely see that making waves. Definitely. What armies do you think will immediately have positive benefits from this? All benefits are positive. Will have benefits from these rules.
Well, unlike the monster meta, I think more armies are going to benefit from it than not, but not necessarily proportionally to other armies benefiting from it. So what do I mean? Not every army before had amazing monsters to bring. Nighthaunt had the Mourngul and wasn't even technically, in the book or whatever. You guys only had the 2, the stone guys, the cows. And so... But did monsters change everything severely? Yeah, it helped you with battle tactics. And keep in mind, we don't know how these are going to play in with battle tactics and getting extra VPs and stuff.
Yeah.
But I do think some armies are built. The Horde type armies like Skaven, Nighthaunt's probably going to be pretty good now. Like I've said already, I'm already fearing zombies and Tzeentch horrors. Plague Bearers are going to be a nightmare. They already have been. It's just going to be a sludge fest. Yep. Anything, like all the Horde armies are going to be miserable. To play against. I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know. We'll see. But I think those are going to become the ones that have the most benefit. But then it's going to become a shootout between those armies. By the way, KO just got a lot better too, which is interesting because they never benefited from the monsters, but now they can bring bodies. It's not super cheap, but I think a unit of Arco is 100 points for 10. That's a reasonable price for 10 models that might be able to count as 30, And I don't think they count as holding it when they're in a ship, but even still, KO's got a little bit more play now. So that's the kind of army that's going to be seeing some improvements. Those that had bad monster options, So.
Yeah. And when we're talking about armies that are going to suffer from this rule, I'm thinking not all armies per se, not like Sons of Behemoth, who are obviously going to suffer immensely from this, unless they get they get some special rules because they're Sons of Behemoth, which would not surprise me, to be fair, because this would ruin their army, right? This is
now that you say that, I don't know if we should be so confident that Ogres and Gits are going to definitely be the 2 destruction battle tomes, because Gargants is going to need it more than anyone is after all this. Especially Gits won't need it at all. If you think about it, Gits will be fine with all their bodies.
Yeah.
So, to be honest, I think Ogres and Suns are going to need it more. So I was saying up to this point, there's no way Suns is going to get a new Battle Tome. But you might be right. And they already had a White Dwarf update, which is not going to fix any of this stuff. Maybe they are going to get a new Battle Tome. I don't know. So
yeah, I mean, I am already looking forward to AOS Coach going through his book and just being so happy that his Horde Gits meta is finally happening. I don't know if you've noticed, but every time he's talking about the Horde meta, he's always talking about his Gits, and I love it how much he's looking forward to it. And one of our friends as well, Michael, who's the tournament organizer that we spoke about in an earlier video, also plays Gits, and I think he can definitely pick them off the shelf right now.
Oh yeah, and there have been some people playing Gits pretty well recently, so I feel like people are figuring them out without having to have a new Battle Tome. Though I'm sure everyone will be disappointed if they have to wait till 2023 to get a Battle Tome for them. But yeah, I do think this meta is going to be really tough for certain types of players, and it's going to be more feel bads for a lot of people than it was when we went from 2nd edition to 3rd edition.
Yeah, I agree. I think this will be tough, especially because if I imagine that I am close to a standard Age of Sigmar player in the sense that when you start a second army or even maybe your first army, usually you don't want to paint 120 of the same model, right?
Well, that's why they released all those new contrast paints.
Yeah, yeah. But I mean, I was looking at an Ogre army a couple of months ago, and I really love elite armies, as you know. So Ogres with just their what's it called, with Kragnos to stone lords on stone horns, and then some smaller infantry units or some cavalry units, and that's it. Like 10 models, maybe 20 tops. That's out. I mean, you're not going to be able to inflict enough damage, even with all your massive rents. That doesn't really matter on super horde units, right? So I think top tier armies will definitely shift here. Yeah.
There might be battle plans that like let a player choose to, not let Galician veteran units count as 3, some kind of or something. There might be something in there that, or maybe objectives can only be held by non-Galician veterans, and then it becomes this weird push-pull kind of thing. And then every tournament has one of those types of battle plans in it, just so that people diversify a little bit more. I don't know. I guess what I'm saying is we don't have the full picture just yet.
Exactly.
We don't know the points cost. What if Gargants or Ogres got way cheaper? Mm-hmm. Imagine you could take an army of like 10 megas. That would be insane. And that might be able to fight back. I don't know. Who knows?
Yeah, maybe. I would actually love if some of the battle tactics could not be completed by Galician veterans. And I know that's almost contradictory to what they always try to do with these, or what they've tried to do with the last one at least, where they really focus on one type of unit, I would say. But that would be so cool if the battle tactics just forced you to at least bring a balanced army, right?
Right. Yeah. But the meta always ends up finding its unbalance. That's the idea of a meta, right? Yeah. Is that people are going to test to the edges of what's possible and try to break something and make something, not fun. And maybe that's a good reason for this to be a 6-month beta testing kind of thing, as I keep talking about. Yeah. I know some people are frustrated with that, especially people that only get so many games in a given period, that they're going to feel like, okay, the rules just totally changed before I could even paint my models or learn the strategies or whatever. So yeah, this meta that we're heading into might be more for the competitive sorts that play all the time, or at least theorycraft all the time. But again, we don't know how much is going to change in 6 months. So it could be a lot. And remember, we're still probably going to keep getting battle scrolls. Yeah. So those keep adjusting the meta along. The game is very vibrantly changing at this point. It feels like it's alive, and that's good. So I can weather 6 to 12 months of horde meta if that's what I have to do to make it so that everyone feels like the game is alive and that their type of army gets its chance to shine in the sun, you know?
Yeah. Okay, so that brings us to, well, our last bit of content for this video. What can we expect next? And in the article, they refer to several things that are going to be in the new GHB. For example, which surprised me, to be fair, updated endless spells. I fully expect them to completely nerf the two only endless spells that were ever being taken, which were, for me at least, Life Swarm and the Mirrors. They might buff some endless spells. Finally, I actually hope they tackle the faction-specific endless spells, or the army-specific endless spells, because for most of the armies, they've been mostly redundant now. They're too expensive and they're useless. Even if they were cheaper, they would probably not be taken.
Yeah, they haven't said that they're going to update those though, because those are in the battle tomes.
Yeah.
I think they're they're updating the ones that are the generic ones.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. Obviously, they're updating the points for the page battle profiles. You're getting 8 new battle tactics and 6 new grand strategies, a new realm spell, and 12 new battle plans. So yeah, that's looking good. It's basically the standard thing, I guess. I do wonder with the 8 new battle tactics, if you're looking at the battle tactics from the current GHB, is basically the same as the ones in the general rulebook, or just the core rulebook. That's the one with some taken out and some added in. Yeah. I wonder whether those 8 new ones are going to be a complete overhaul this time. I don't expect them to be, but they could be.
What might be nice if the horde units are going to be holding objectives, if these battle tactics offered things that weren't objective oriented, you know, some counterplay. So like, instead of removing a model, say like, I don't know, you have 3 units within a certain quadrant of the battlefield, you know, something like that has nothing to do with holding objectives.
Yeah.
Because I think the objectives, unless they put a ton of objectives on the field to counterbalance, you know, like this like overwhelming amount of bodies that are going to be represented on him, I feel like objectives are going to either become just pointless to fight over, like it's going to be obvious who's going to win, unless these battle tactics balance that out somehow. So let's cross our fingers. The grand strategies, I would like to see more variety, like than just like hold the line, Beastmaster, and Prize Sorcery, which are like the only 3 you ever saw. Sometimes Dominating Presence, but like, and obviously Beastmaster is probably falling off. Hold the line is going to be too obvious of a thing because everyone's going to be bringing battle line. So hopefully that falls off, but we'll see.
Yeah, if we're to believe the rumors, then at least the battle tactics are going to be way harder, and I actually look forward to that. And I would love, as you say, if they planned ahead and thought like, okay, grabbing objectives is going to become much more easy, much easier. Much easier. So we're going to make battle tactics harder, but you're still going to have to go for those tactics because it scores you know, the same amount of points or even sometimes more points than you get from objectives, depending on the mission.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And also they mentioned at one point, not in this update, but that those battle plans were going to be split 6 and 6, meaning, well, I don't know what that means. That maybe 6 are going to be for specific scenarios and 6 are more general. I don't know. But they mentioned that elsewhere earlier on in a Warcom update. So
yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So that brings to the end of this video. Thank you everyone for watching. Please leave a like, share, and subscribe if you're interested in our in-depth review for this book, which we will definitely do when it comes out. You can also expect an in-depth review for the Sylvaneth Battle Tome the day it's released. So not this Saturday when you can pre-order it, but the Saturday afterwards. The review is going to be out the day it's released. So we'll get the book a little bit earlier and we'll prepare ahead.
And in the meantime, I've got the follow-up video to the Phoenix Guard War Scroll analysis. The defensive half will be coming out probably sometime sooner than later. So
yeah, so that's something else you get to look forward to. Please do join the Discord if you're eager to contribute to the discussion, or leave a comment in the comment section and let us know what you want to see next. And if you loved Ryan's Math Hammer video part 2, because we put a lot of work into it. Ryan, thank you again for spending some impromptu time on this video. I was just too excited to not talk about it with you, so glad we had this chat.
Sure thing. It's always a pleasure, and we're all pulling for your voice to keep getting better.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
All right, guys. See you in the next one.